The arena stretched across the heart of the galactic city, enormous and glittering under the artificial lights of 1,000 hovering cameras. Spectators filled every seat, a swirling mass of color and movement, each alien species more exotic than the next. Some had wings that shimmered with bioluminescent patterns. Others had long tentacles that waved in excitement. The hum of conversation, laughter, and betting whispers filled the air. But beneath it all was a tension that could be felt like electricity. Today was a day unlike any other. The day the Dragon Lady would fight again. The Dragon Lady. Her name alone sent shivers through anyone who had dared to challenge her. She was more than a pilot. She was a legend. Rumors said she had never lost a duel in her life, that her mech was not just a machine but an extension of herself, moving as if it could think on its own. Aliens from hundreds of star systems had tried to challenge her. None had survived more than a few minutes. None had dared bid for her in the arena auctions. She was untouchable, a name spoken in fear, awe, and respect. From her cockpit, high above the arena floor, the Dragon Lady looked down with sharp, calculating eyes. Her mech stood like a towering black dragon, sleek and armored, its wings folded but ready to unfold in a deadly display. The sun of the artificial sky reflected on her polished plating, making her appear more intimidating than ever. Every movement she made was precise, controlled. There was no hesitation, no doubt. The crowd sensed it. They whispered to each other, leaning forward in their seats. Everyone knew what was about to happen. Who will dare challenge the Dragon Lady today? The announcer's voice boomed across the arena, amplified and deep, echoing in every corner. His words carried both excitement and warning. Silence answered him. No hand went up. No mech rolled forward. For a long moment, the only sound was the faint hum of engines and the nervous shifting of spectators in their seats. The Dragon Lady's gaze swept the arena floor, piercing through the crowd, searching for any sign of a challenger. Then, almost imperceptibly, a small hand raised from the very back of the arena. It was human. Small, solitary, almost invisible among the chaos of alien bodies. The announcer paused, a flicker of disbelief crossing his face. "Is that?" he muttered, and then louder, "A human? A lone human is stepping forward." Gasps rippled through the crowd. The cameras swung to focus, capturing the moment for millions of viewers across the galaxy. The human, a mechanic by trade, walked calmly toward the arena floor. His steps were steady, even though the weight of all eyes pressed down on him. He wore simple clothing, nothing like the expensive mech pilots who usually competed. His mech, too, was small, almost crude, patched with visible repairs and mechanical tweaks. It lacked the elegance and deadly grace of the Dragon Lady's machine. Whispers erupted. No one can survive against her," a winged alien murmured to its companion. "And that human? He's just a mechanic." But the human did not stop. He climbed into his mech's cockpit with ease, hands sure and steady. The mech came alive with a soft whir, its engines vibrating in anticipation. It was smaller, yes, but there was something in the way it moved that made even the most experienced spectators pause. There was a spark of ingenuity in the design, a hint that its pilot knew every inch of his machine better than anyone else could. The Dragon Lady tilted her head slightly. She had never seen a human dare this before. She had fought countless aliens, each trying to outmatch her with brute force, speed, or clever tactics. None had worked, and yet, this one moved with a quiet confidence. It was almost amusing, almost insulting, but her instincts, honed over countless battles, told her not to underestimate him. "Engage when ready," she said softly, though her voice carried only inside her cockpit. Outside, the crowd held its breath. The human's mech shifted its weight, readying itself for the fight. Sensors glowed, weapons hummed quietly, and for a moment, the two opponents simply stared at each other across the arena floor. It was a pause, a moment of tension that seemed to stretch time itself. Every spectator felt it. Even the cameras seemed to hold their gaze. Then, slowly, the Dragon Lady's mech moved forward, wings unfurling, engines roaring like a beast awakening. Sparks danced along the edges of her armor as she adjusted her stance. Every step was calculated, every movement designed to intimidate. She was a predator, and the human, if he knew it, was her prey. But the human did not falter. He adjusted his controls, moving his smaller mech with precision, testing its limits. The crowd gasped again as the human executed a move that none expected. He flipped his mech in a daring maneuver, dodging the initial sweep of the Dragon Lady's massive claws. There was a moment of silence, a moment of shock. The Dragon Lady's eyes narrowed. This human, he had skill. The announcer's voice rang out, trembling with excitement. Unbelievable! That human mechanic. He just dodged the Dragon Lady's first strike. Aliens whispered furiously, betting boards flashing red and green with the changing odds. He cannot last, one shouted. He is finished, another cried. But still the human pressed forward, calm and steady, using every trick he knew. His small mech may not have had the raw power of the Dragon Ladies, but it had agility, intelligence, and the cunning of a human mind. The Dragon Lady, for the first time in her career, felt a thrill she had never known. Here was a challenge unlike any she had faced. Not brute strength, not flashy weapons, but cleverness. Humans were unpredictable. She had always dismissed them, underestimated them, and now she realized why stories of human ingenuity had reached even her ears. The battle was about to begin in earnest. Sparks flew as the Dragon Lady lunged. The human rolled, twisting in ways that seemed impossible for his mech. The crowd erupted, cheering and gasping in equal measure. Every move, every dodge, every strike was magnified, broadcast to countless viewers who could hardly believe their eyes. Somewhere in the back of the arena, an older human spectator whispered, "That's our boy. That's how humans fight." Pride and fear mixed in the same breath. The human mechanic's hands gripped the controls with steady determination. He was not here to show off. He was here to survive, to prove that even the untouchable could be challenged. The Dragon Lady adjusted her stance, wings folding in a tight defensive arc. Her claws scraped the arena floor, leaving deep marks. She had never met an opponent like this, never faced one who could anticipate her every move so quickly. The battle was no longer just a test of power, it had become a dance of wit and skill. The human mechanic's mech zipped forward, weaving through the Dragon Lady's attacks. Each maneuver was calculated, precise, and daring. The crowd held its breath. Every spectator, alien and human alike, could feel the tension as if it were a living thing, wrapping itself around the arena. And then, at that exact moment, the human did something that made even the Dragon Lady pause. A small panel opened on his mech, and a flash of energy shot toward her mech. Not strong enough to destroy her, but enough to force her to adjust. It was clever, unexpected, and it showed that this human mechanic was not just brave, but brilliant. The crowd roared, the cameras zooming in on every expression, every movement. Aliens who had bet everything on the Dragon Lady's victory began to whisper, doubt creeping in. Could the untouchable finally be touched? Could the legend finally be challenged? For the Dragon Lady, it was a question she had never asked herself. And for the human mechanic, it was a moment he had dreamed of his entire life. The chance to face a legend, to defy the impossible, to show that courage, intelligence, and determination could stand against power and fear. The arena seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the next move. The battle had only just begun, but already it was clear. This was no ordinary duel. This was history in the making. And in the middle of the arena, two figures faced each other, ready to write a story that would be told across galaxies for generations to come. The arena fell silent for a moment after the human mechanic's daring move. Every eye was fixed on him, trying to understand how someone so small, so seemingly ordinary, could stand in the same arena as the Dragon Lady. The tension was electric, almost painful to breathe. Aliens leaned forward, some clutching betting boards, others whispering to companions. "It's impossible. No one can survive her attacks," one winged alien muttered. And yet, that human, he moved like a shadow. The Dragon Lady adjusted her stance, her mech's armor glinting under the artificial lights. She had faced warriors from hundreds of worlds, each confident in their strength, their skill, their reputation. None had forced her to hesitate. None had made her pause, ever. Yet now, something flickered in her mind. A tiny spark of curiosity. This human was different. He was small, yes, but he moved with intelligence, with strategy. And most of all, he dared. The human's mech hovered a few feet above the arena floor, engines humming in a controlled, steady rhythm. He did not attack recklessly. He did not boast. He waited, calculated, watching the Dragon Lady's every movement, analyzing her stance, her patterns, the slight twitch in her fingers. Every pilot knew that the first few moves were critical. One mistake, one misstep, and it could all be over. Yet he seemed calm, almost serene. Whispers spread through the audience. He's not afraid. He doesn't even seem nervous. Humans, they are strange creatures. An older alien whispered to its neighbor. They have a way of surviving when no one expects it. The announcer's voice rang out again, louder this time, filled with excitement and disbelief. Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all species, never before has a human dared challenge the Dragon Lady. And yet, here he is. The question is, can he survive even one strike? The Dragon Lady's eyes narrowed. She wanted to test him, not with full power, not yet. A first strike would reveal his skill without endangering the crowd or herself. She moved forward, claws extending, the engines of her mech roaring like a predator about to pounce. Sparks danced along the arena floor, the smell of burning metal filling the air. The human reacted instantly. His mech twisted, rolled, and ducked, dodging the Dragon Lady's swipe with uncanny precision. For a moment, the arena seemed frozen. Every spectator held their breath. No one had ever moved like that against her. The Dragon Lady's mouth curved slightly. Not in amusement, not in surprise, but in recognition. This human was clever. The crowd erupted in cheers and gasps, a mixture of fear and excitement. Holographic betting boards flickered, changing odds in real time. Every alien in the stands debated, shouted, and gestured wildly. The human's mech might have been smaller, less powerful, less armored, but the agility, the intelligence, it was unmatched. The Dragon Lady lunged again, faster this time, her claws slicing through the air with deadly precision. The human rolled sideways, flipping his mech in a maneuver so quick that even some veterans in the crowd missed it. He fired a small energy pulse from his mech, not enough to harm the Dragon Lady, but enough to push her back slightly. A tiny spark of metal flew from her armor. The crowd gasped. Inside her cockpit, the Dragon Lady frowned. She had never faced an opponent who could anticipate her moves so quickly. She had never been forced to adjust, to rethink strategy mid-battle. And yet, here he was, a human, a mere mechanic standing before her and surviving. She felt a thrill she had never experienced before. This was not just a duel. This was a test, and for the first time, she was unsure who would win. The human's eyes were sharp behind the visor, scanning, analyzing, calculating. He had no illusions about the Dragon Lady's power. He knew that one wrong move could end everything. But he also knew that raw strength was not the only path to victory. He relied on speed, on clever maneuvers, on exploiting weaknesses others ignored. Every twist, every roll, every subtle movement of his mech was part of a plan. The Dragon Lady's attacks became more aggressive, faster, more dangerous. Sparks flew as metal scraped against metal. The smaller human mech twisted and turned, dodging, spinning, avoiding direct hits. The crowd could hardly believe their eyes. The announcer shouted, his voice cracking with excitement. Incredible! The human mechanic is surviving the Dragon Lady's assault. Every move, precise, daring genius. Even the betting aliens grew quiet, realizing that the odds they had considered certain were now in question. Impossible, a traitor muttered under his breath. This human, he's rewriting the rules. The human seized a momentary opening. He pushed his mech forward, dodging a sweeping strike and landing a calculated counter. It was not a strike meant to harm, but it disrupted the Dragon Lady's rhythm. She stumbled slightly, the first tiny error she had made in decades. Gasps filled the arena. Whispers spread like wildfire. He's making her react. The Dragon Lady's expression changed. She had never respected a challenger so early in the fight. She had never needed to. But now, something inside her shifted. She studied the human, noting every movement, every adjustment. He was unpredictable, intelligent, and bold. And most importantly, he was human, a species she had long underestimated. The human's mech hummed softly, engines flickering with energy. He took another small risk, darting closer, moving along the Dragon Lady's blind spot, just as he had calculated. Sparks flew as their mechs brushed past, the crowd exploding in a mixture of fear and exhilaration. Aliens cheered, some covering their eyes, some leaning forward in disbelief. The human's mechanics and courage were on full display. For the Dragon Lady, the battle had shifted from domination to observation. She tested, probed, and pushed her mech to the limit. Every strike was precise, every movement calculated. And yet, the human mechanic adapted with uncanny speed. It was no longer just a fight. It was a battle of minds, of strategy, and of courage. The crowd could feel the tension growing. The first 5 to 7 minutes had passed, and already the duel was historic. No one had ever seen the Dragon Lady challenged like this. No one had ever seen a human survive her attacks. Every second, every movement, every choice carried weight. The human's courage inspired awe, while the Dragon Lady's skill reminded everyone why she was feared across the galaxy. And in that moment, the human knew one thing clearly. This battle was only beginning. The Dragon Lady was not just a legend. She was the ultimate test. To survive, to win, he would need every ounce of ingenuity, every trick he had ever learned, and every piece of courage he could muster. One mistake, one lapse in concentration, and it would all be over. But he did not fear. Not now, not ever. Because humans, he thought, had a way of surviving when no one expected it. The Dragon Lady's eyes locked onto him once more. The fight had begun, and the arena itself seemed to hold its breath. Every spectator waited, every heart pounded. The human mechanic had challenged the untouchable, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The arena trembled as the two mechs faced each other, engines humming like predators circling in a jungle. Sparks danced from the floor as the Dragon Lady's mech shifted its weight, claws scraping the metal panels. Her movements were fluid, perfect, a deadly combination of speed and precision. Across from her, the human mechanic's smaller mech glimmered with patched armor and odd modifications, its design unconventional but functional. He knew he couldn't match her in raw power. He had to rely on wit, agility, and every trick he had ever learned. The Dragon Lady struck first. With a roar of energy, she lunged forward, claws slicing through the air like a blade. The human's mech twisted, rolling aside at the last possible moment. The audience gasped. Every alien in the stands leaned forward, eyes wide, hearts racing. The Dragon Lady's attacks were fast, deadly, and precise. Yet the human moved with a grace that surprised everyone. "Impossible," muttered a traitor from the stands, shaking his head. No human could survive that. But the human did more than survive. He countered with a small energy pulse, just enough to knock the Dragon Lady slightly off balance. Not powerful enough to harm her, but enough to disrupt her rhythm. For a moment, the legendary pilot paused, eyes narrowing in focus. She had faced countless foes, but this human, he was clever. He was unpredictable, and in unpredictability lay danger. The battle escalated. Sparks flew as the Dragon Lady swung her claws in wide arcs, engines screaming with power. The human's mech darted, rolled, and twisted in a dizzying dance, evading blow after blow. He used the environment cleverly, bouncing off the walls, ducking under mechanical arms, and exploiting every opening he could find. Every move was precise, calculated, yet daring. The crowd was on its feet, some cheering, some gasping, some shaking their heads in disbelief. The Dragon Lady adjusted her strategy. She was not just attacking now. She was probing, testing, trying to predict the human's next move. She lunged, feinted, and spun, a deadly storm of mechanical fury. The human's mech dodged each strike, rolling just in time, narrowly avoiding crushing metal. His pulse quickened, but his mind remained sharp. He could not afford a single mistake. One wrong move and it would all be over. Suddenly, the human executed a daring maneuver. He flipped his mech upside down, sliding along the arena floor like a shadow. Sparks flew as the dragon lady's claw narrowly missed him. The audience erupted, a mixture of astonishment and excitement. "Look at that!" shouted the announcer. "The human mechanic. He's moving like a phantom. He's surviving the dragon lady's attacks." The dragon lady paused briefly, eyes narrowing. She had never seen such agility combined with precise timing. Most opponents relied on brute force or flashy weapons, but this human relied on cleverness and daring maneuvers. She tilted her head slightly, a small smile forming, almost imperceptible. This battle was different. This human was different. The human pressed forward, small energy pulses firing from his mech, forcing the dragon lady to adjust constantly. He aimed not to damage, but to distract, to create openings. He had studied her movements carefully. He knew one small advantage could change the tide. He dodged, rolled, and spun, keeping just out of reach of her massive claws, each move testing her reactions, each pulse probing for weakness. The crowd could hardly believe what they were seeing. Aliens shouted, waved, and pointed at the arena floor, their voices mixing into a chaotic roar. "He's surviving," one yelled. He's making her work for it," another exclaimed. Betting boards flickered wildly, odds changing as spectators reevaluated everything they thought they knew. The dragon lady's attacks grew faster, more precise. Sparks flew from near misses, the sound of metal scraping metal ringing across the arena. She pushed her mech to the limit, determined to finish this quickly. But every strike the human faced, he countered with intelligence and skill. He used every trick, every twist, every move he had learned as a mechanic to outmaneuver her. Then came the first real strike. The dragon lady lunged with her claws extended, aiming to disable the human's mech. Time seemed to slow as the smaller mech twisted, rolled, and fired a counterpulse. Sparks erupted as metal met metal. The dragon lady stumbled slightly, a rare miscalculation, and the audience gasped. For the first time in decades, someone had made the dragon lady falter. The human's pulse sent a vibration through her mech, just enough to make her adjust her stance. He had not defeated her, not yet, but he had forced her to react. And that was all he needed. One small mistake, one tiny advantage, could grow into something far greater. The dragon lady recovered quickly, spinning her mech to face him again. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, studied him carefully. She had underestimated him at first, but now she understood. This human mechanic was not just lucky. He was clever, daring, and fearless, and that combination made him dangerous. The human's hands gripped the controls tightly. He could feel his heart racing, but he did not panic. He moved his mech with precision, anticipating her next strike. Sparks flew around him as the dragon lady struck again. Faster this time, each attack more threatening than the last. But he dodged, weaving and flipping, exploiting every small gap in her defense. A loud cheer erupted from the stands as the human narrowly avoided a deadly strike. Some spectators could not believe what they were seeing. "He's actually doing it," shouted one alien. "He's surviving the dragon lady." Others simply held their breath, unable to look away. The tension was unbearable. The dragon lady's expression hardened. She was not angry. She was focused, intrigued, and aware that this human might be the first opponent who could truly challenge her. She lunged again, claws extending in a precise strike aimed to test his limits. The human rolled, slid along the arena floor, and fired another calculated pulse, forcing her mech back. Time and again the pattern repeated, strike and dodge, attack and counter. The crowd was on edge, watching every move. No one had ever seen such a battle of skill, intelligence, and courage. The human mechanic, small and unassuming, was holding his own against the untouchable dragon lady. And in that moment, the impossible seemed just a little possible. The announcer's voice boomed over the arena, shaking with excitement. Incredible! The human mechanic is not just surviving. He's challenging the dragon lady. Every move, every twist. He's turning the tide. The human's mind raced, analyzing, calculating, anticipating. He knew he could not match her strength, but he could outthink her. And in this arena, intelligence and courage could sometimes outweigh raw power. He took a deep breath, preparing for the next exchange, knowing that the real test, the true clash of titans, was only just beginning. And in that instant, the dragon lady realized one undeniable truth. She had met her match, not in brute force, but in ingenuity. And the galaxy would watch as the clash of titans unfolded, a battle that would be remembered for generations. The arena shook with every strike and dodge, the sound of metal scraping metal echoing like thunder. Sparks flew from the dragon lady's claws as she spun and lunged with deadly precision. Yet the human mechanic continued to evade, moving his patched-up mech with astonishing skill. The crowd could hardly keep up, their eyes following a blur of metal, energy pulses, and rapid movements. For the first time in the dragon lady's long career, she felt an unusual tension. She had faced countless opponents, but never one who seemed to anticipate her every move, dodging not with luck but with understanding. There was something more here, something she could not see yet, but she could feel it in the way he moved, how his mech responded to her strikes. The human's mech darted low to the arena floor, gliding under her extended claws, engines whirring with precise control. As he rolled and flipped, the panel on the side of his mech glowed briefly. No one in the arena noticed except for a few who understood mechanical genius. There, hidden inside, were modifications, ingenious adjustments that gave him more agility, more control, and a way to respond to attacks that even the dragon lady had not predicted. He had spent years studying mechs, repairing them, improving them quietly in small workshops across human colonies. He knew the strengths and weaknesses of almost every model in the galaxy, and he had built his mech from spare parts, not for brute strength, but for speed, maneuverability, and clever tactics. Every twist, every dodge, every pulse he fired was calculated to exploit a weakness in his opponent. The dragon lady adjusted her stance again, a small frown on her face. Her strikes were deadly, but this human kept surviving. His movements were not random. They had purpose. He was reading her, learning from her attacks in real time and adjusting. She had never encountered this before. She had faced powerful pilots, clever pilots, but none like this. Humans were always underestimated, and she had underestimated him. The crowd was on the edge of their seats. Aliens whispered furiously, trying to make sense of what they were seeing. "It's impossible," one traitor said. "He's just a human mechanic. How can he survive this?" "Watch carefully," another whispered. "He's not just surviving, he's learning, adapting. He's smarter than we think." The human maneuvered his mech around a sweeping strike, rolling onto its side. He pressed a small button inside his cockpit, and a series of mechanical arms extended from hidden compartments. They were tiny, barely noticeable, but they allowed him to adjust the mech's balance and redirect energy from incoming attacks. The dragon lady's claws swiped through the spot he had just vacated, catching only empty air. The announcer's voice boomed over the arena. "Ladies, gentlemen, and species across the galaxy, the human mechanic. He's not just surviving the dragon lady. He's adapting, using clever modifications and daring maneuvers. Can anyone believe this?" The dragon lady's eyes narrowed. She realized that sheer power alone would not win this fight. She needed to be unpredictable, more cunning than ever. But the human's ingenuity matched her own skill, and for the first time, she felt a thrill she had never known before. A true challenge. The human zipped forward, dodging another strike, flipping over a spike of energy from her claws. He aimed his mech at a weak point he had identified earlier, a joint in her armor that even the dragon lady rarely used. A small pulse shot out, not enough to harm her, but enough to disrupt her balance slightly. A faint spark flew from her armor. The crowd gasped. For the first time, the Dragon Lady had to adjust, reacting to him rather than leading the battle. He continued to press his advantage, weaving in unpredictable patterns, forcing her to overextend, testing her limits. Each pulse, each move, each adjustment of his mech was carefully calculated. The human mechanic had turned the fight into a test of skill and intellect. The Dragon Lady's attacks grew more intense, her claws striking faster, her engines roaring with power. But the human's mech was always one step ahead, always adapting. The crowd erupted with excitement. Holographic boards flashed, showing betting odds that swung wildly as aliens realized that the Dragon Lady's invincibility was being challenged. Whispers turned to shouts, cheers mixed with gasps. Everyone was witnessing something extraordinary. Inside her cockpit, the Dragon Lady's mind raced. She had fought countless opponents, each one relying on power, speed, or tricks. But this human, he was a master of mechanics and strategy. His knowledge of machines gave him the edge she had never seen before. She had underestimated him at first, and now she had to respect him. The human's pulse of energy struck again, this time forcing the Dragon Lady to take a step back. She narrowed her eyes, acknowledging the human's skill. He had used his knowledge, his ingenuity, and his courage to challenge her. For the first time, she felt true respect for an opponent. The human's mech darted low, rolling under a spinning strike, and he fired a series of rapid pulses, hitting multiple weak points on her armor. The Dragon Lady adjusted, deflecting some, but a few sparks flew from minor damage. The crowd erupted. "Unbelievable!" shouted the announcer. "The human mechanic. He's actually making the Dragon Lady react. He's turning the fight." The human's mind was calm, though his heart raced. Every move, every pulse, every adjustment was calculated. He had studied her patterns, learned her tendencies, and built his mech to exploit weaknesses she did not even know she had. The Dragon Lady might be powerful, but knowledge, creativity, and courage were his weapons. For the Dragon Lady, the battle had changed. No longer was it just a demonstration of her power. It had become a true duel of minds. She lunged, attacked, and spun with precision, but the human's responses forced her to adapt constantly. Every second, every strike, every move was a test of skill and wit. The crowd watched, riveted. Aliens whispered in awe, some shaking their heads in disbelief. "He's a genius," one said. "A human genius." Others cheered, amazed by the courage and cleverness of the mechanic who dared challenge the untouchable Dragon Lady. The human zipped forward again, dodging a massive strike, flipping his mech with grace and precision. He adjusted his controls, preparing for the next exchange, knowing the battle was far from over. The Dragon Lady's eyes locked onto him, a new respect forming. This human mechanic had revealed a secret weapon: intelligence, ingenuity, and the courage to face the untouchable. And as the sparks flew and the arena roared, it was clear to everyone watching that this fight was no longer just about strength. It was a battle of minds, strategy, and willpower. A duel that would be remembered across galaxies for generations. The arena was a whirlwind of sparks, smoke, and the deafening roar of engines. The Dragon Lady's mech moved like a storm, her claws slicing through the air with lethal precision. But the human mechanic's smaller, patched-up mech danced around her strikes, rolling, flipping, and darting in ways no one thought possible. Every move was calculated, every dodge intentional. For the first time, the Dragon Lady felt the weight of doubt creeping in. This human, this tiny mechanic, was turning her unstoppable assault into a struggle. The crowd could hardly believe their eyes. Cheers, gasps, and excited shouts mingled into a single roar that filled the arena. Aliens leaned forward, pointing, shouting, some even spilling their drinks in disbelief. "He's actually holding his own," one exclaimed. "He's outsmarting her," another whispered, wide-eyed. Betting boards flickered wildly as odds shifted, some in disbelief, some in awe. The human's mech zipped low to the ground, narrowly avoiding a spinning strike that left scorch marks on the arena floor. He pressed a small button on his control panel, and an energy shield flickered briefly, absorbing some of the Dragon Lady's next attack. The Dragon Lady paused for the briefest moment, surprised by the human's foresight. She had never faced an opponent who combined daring moves with clever technology so seamlessly. The human seized the opportunity. He darted forward, weaving between her legs, his mech's engines humming with precision. Sparks flew as he grazed her armor, causing minor damage, small but significant. The crowd erupted, their excitement growing with every maneuver. "He's doing it again. He's making her react," the announcer shouted, his voice cracking with excitement. "The human mechanic. He's not just surviving, he's changing the fight." The Dragon Lady's attacks became more aggressive, faster, more unpredictable. She unleashed a series of rapid strikes, her claws cutting through the air like blades of fire. The human dodged, twisted, and rolled, using his mech's agility to evade the deadly blows. Every movement was precise, every dodge carefully calculated. He knew he could not overpower her. He could only outthink her, stay one step ahead, and exploit even the smallest opening. The crowd leaned forward, eyes wide, holding their breath. The tension was unbearable. Every strike, every movement, every flicker of energy from the mechs carried weight. Spectators whispered to each other, their voices filled with awe. "I've never seen anything like this," one said. "He's turning the unstoppable Dragon Lady into a challenge, and she's reacting to him." The human pressed on, using every trick he had learned from years of working on mechs. He darted behind a raised platform, rolled across it, and fired a series of energy pulses at the Dragon Lady's joints. Small hits, but enough to force her to adjust her movements. For the first time, the Dragon Lady stumbled slightly, her strike missing its mark. The audience gasped. The untouchable Dragon Lady had faltered. The Dragon Lady's eyes narrowed. She was not used to faltering. She had never faced someone who could read her, anticipate her moves, and respond so quickly. But this human mechanic was not just clever, he was fearless. Every maneuver, every pulse, every twist of his mech spoke of courage and ingenuity. He had turned the tide of the battle, and she could feel it. The human zipped forward again, dodging a spinning strike that sent sparks flying across the arena. He rolled to the side, flipped his mech, and fired a pulse that grazed her armor once more. The crowd erupted into cheers and applause. Aliens jumped from their seats, some cheering, some gasping, others simply shaking their heads in disbelief. The Dragon Lady's legend was being challenged, and the human mechanic was the one doing it. The Dragon Lady adjusted her tactics. She began to feint, pretending to strike one way while attacking another. She tested his reactions, trying to find a weakness. But the human anticipated her moves, dodging, rolling, and countering with small but effective pulses. Every time she thought she had an advantage, he turned it into a test of skill, a puzzle that she had to solve in real time. The announcer's voice rang out, filled with excitement and disbelief. "Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all species, the Dragon Lady, the untouchable Dragon Lady, is being challenged. The human mechanic. He's turning the tide of the battle." The human's mind was razor-sharp. He could feel the fatigue of the constant dodging, the strain on his mech, but he did not falter. He had one plan: survive, adapt, and exploit the smallest opportunity. And now he could see a small opening, a joint in the Dragon Lady's armor that had been exposed in a previous strike. It was minor, almost invisible, but it could be the key. The Dragon Lady lunged again, claws extended, engines roaring. The human twisted his mech, rolling to the side, and fired a precise energy pulse at the joint. Sparks flew as the strike connected, causing her mech to stumble slightly. The crowd erupted. Aliens cheered, some shouting, some simply staring in awe. The impossible was happening. The Dragon Lady recovered quickly, but the damage was done. Her expression changed subtly, a mixture of respect and surprise. She had underestimated this human. He had taken risks, used clever tactics, and turned her own strength against her. The battle was no longer one-sided. The tide had truly turned. The human's mech zipped forward, dodging a massive strike, flipping and rolling with precision. Every movement, every pulse, every adjustment was calculated. He could feel the thrill of the battle, the tension of the arena, and the eyes of the galaxy upon him. He was no longer just surviving, he was competing, challenging, and changing the game. The Dragon Lady's eyes locked onto him, a spark of admiration forming. She realized that this human mechanic had something she rarely saw in opponents: intelligence, courage, and the willingness to take risks. She had faced legends, warriors, and champions, but this human, he was different. He had turned her unstoppable assault into a test of skill, strategy, and wit. The arena seemed to pulse with energy, the crowd's excitement reaching a fever pitch. Sparks flew from the mechs, the smell of burning metal filled the air, and the roar of engines echoed like thunder. The battle had reached a new level, a turning point where the human mechanic's ingenuity and courage had forced the Dragon Lady to react, adapt, and respect him as a worthy opponent. And in that moment the galaxy watched, captivated. A human, a small, clever, fearless human, had turned the tide against the untouchable Dragon Lady. The impossible was happening, and everyone knew that this battle would be remembered for generations. The arena trembled with anticipation. Every eye, every camera, every being across countless worlds was focused on the two mechs facing each other. The Dragon Lady's armor gleamed, her claws extended, engines roaring like a living storm. Sparks danced in the air as her mech shifted, a predator poised to strike. Across from her, the human mechanic's patched-up mech hovered, small but agile, engines humming with quiet power. The tension was electric. The moment of truth had arrived. The Dragon Lady lunged, her claws slicing through the air with terrifying speed. The human dodged, rolling to the side, narrowly avoiding the deadly strike. The crowd gasped, hearts pounding, as sparks flew across the arena floor. He pressed a button inside his cockpit, activating a hidden energy pulse that forced the Dragon Lady to stumble slightly. Every second, every move, every pulse mattered. For the first time in decades, the Dragon Lady realized that her opponent was not just surviving, he was challenging her. She had underestimated humans, dismissed their ingenuity, and now she faced the proof of their courage and intelligence. This small mechanic had turned her unstoppable assault into a test of skill and wit. The human seized the moment. He darted forward, weaving between her legs, flipping his mech in a daring move that left the Dragon Lady momentarily unbalanced. Sparks flew as he fired a calculated energy pulse at a weak point in her armor, a joint she rarely exposed. The impact caused a small cascade of sparks, enough to force her mech to adjust. The crowd erupted in cheers, disbelief written on every face. The Dragon Lady's eyes narrowed. She had never respected an opponent so early in a fight, but now respect mingled with determination. She lunged again, faster, more precise, claws slicing like blades of fire. The human twisted and rolled, dodging each strike, using every trick, every clever adjustment his mech allowed. He had built this machine not for raw power, but for agility, intelligence, and the cunning to survive impossible odds. The audience could hardly contain themselves. Aliens shouted, cheered, and gasped, some leaning forward, some clapping, some shaking their heads in awe. He's doing it," one whispered. "The human. He's making the Dragon Lady react." The human pressed on, small pulses of energy fired with perfect timing, forcing the Dragon Lady to adjust constantly. She lunged, twisted, spun, but every time she struck, he countered, dodged, or used his clever modifications to stay alive. Sparks flew, metal clashed, and the arena seemed alive with tension. Then came the final move. The human rolled low, flipping behind the Dragon Lady's mech, approaching a critical weak point in the armor he had studied since the battle began. He pressed a sequence of buttons, and a surge of energy pulsed through his mech. The Dragon Lady lunged to counter, but she had been forced into a defensive position, her movements no longer fully under her control. With precise timing, the human struck the weak joint, sending a cascade of sparks and smoke across her mech. The Dragon Lady's claws faltered, her engine sputtered, and the audience gasped in stunned silence. For the first time, the untouchable Dragon Lady had been forced to yield, even if just momentarily. The human's mech hovered for a brief moment, engines humming steadily. He had survived, he had fought, and he had forced the legend to acknowledge him. The crowd erupted, cheers, applause, and shouts mixing into a deafening roar. Aliens leaned forward, eyes wide with amazement. Even those who had bet against him whispered in awe. Inside her cockpit, the Dragon Lady exhaled. She had never faced a challenge like this. She had underestimated the human spirit, underestimated ingenuity, courage, and the audacity to stand against the untouchable. And now she understood. Respect flickered in her eyes. She nodded slightly, a silent acknowledgement of his skill and bravery. The human disembarked from his mech, small, exhausted, but triumphant. Sweat glistened on his brow, and his hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the intensity of what he had achieved. He had faced the Dragon Lady, the untouchable, and survived. More than that, he had forced her to recognize him as a worthy opponent. The crowd continued to roar, some standing, some cheering, some simply shaking their heads in disbelief. Across the galaxy, millions of viewers watched, captivated, inspired, and astonished. A human had dared to challenge the untouchable Dragon Lady, and had triumphed not through sheer strength, but through courage, intelligence, and the clever use of his skills. For the Dragon Lady, this battle would be remembered forever. For the human mechanic, this was a moment of proof, not just of his own skill but of the human spirit. A spirit that dared, that fought, and that could survive against legends. And as the crowd erupted into celebration, the human looked at the Dragon Lady, a small smile forming on his face. He had survived, he had challenged the impossible, and he had proven that even the untouchable could be met with courage, wit, and determination. The arena lights dimmed slightly as the cheers continued, the story of this battle spreading across the galaxy like wildfire. A legend had been challenged, a myth had been confronted, and humanity had once again shown that courage and intelligence could turn the impossible into reality. And in that moment, one small human mechanic stood victorious. Not just over a legendary foe, but over doubt, fear, and impossibility itself. The crowd's roar echoed across the city, across the galaxy, and the story of the human who dared to face the Dragon Lady would never be forgotten.